We are talking about id, ego, and superego. These three concepts were given by Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud said in his theory of personality. So, before we discuss ego, id, and superego, let's discuss the theory of personality. What is a personality? Personality वो होता है जो आपके अंदर जितनी भी आपकी क्वालिटीज़ हैं, एट्रीब्यूट्स हैं, वो सब कंबाइन हो जाएं तो आपका एक कैरेक्टर बनता है एंड वही कैरेक्टर आपकी पर्सनैलिटी बनती है. सो सिगमंड फ्रॉइड इन हिज थियोरी ऑफ पर्सनैलिटी सेड दैट ह्यूमन साइकी. व्हाट डू यू मीन बाय ह्यूमन साइकी? Psyche is just a fancy word given to the mind. So here we are talking about the mental aspect. The mind means the mental aspect and not the physical aspect. Physical aspect is the brain of a human. So here basically, in very simple words, we are talking about the software of the human mind. The human personality, the software of the human personality, and not the hardware. The hardware is our brain, and software is our psyche, the mind, the mental aspect. So we're purely talking about the mental aspect here. So Sigmund Freud, in his theory of personality, said the human psyche is made up of three different but interacting components. So the thing we need to notice here is that they are different, but they are constantly interacting with each other. What are those three components? Id, ego, and superego. All id, ego, and superego, they interact with each other. They work with each other to make us what we are as a person. They affect, they influence our behavior and our personality. So this is very simple. Sigmund Freud, in his theory of personality, said the human psyche is made up of ego, superego, and id, and they all interact with each other to make our behavior the way it is. Even though we call it a structure, but this theory actually is not scientifically proven. This is purely based on Sigmund Freud's observations, but this is the reason because of which Sigmund Freud faces a lot of criticism. But all said and done, this theory actually forms the base for psychoanalysis. Okay, so हम id समझेंगे. जो id है between id, ego and superego, id is the first one to develop in any human personality. So this is the first one that comes into being. And जो id है ना, वो हमारे pure instincts, हमारे जो instincts है उसकी needs and desires को fulfill करता है. वो क्या needs and desires हैं? वो हमारे biological urges हैं. इसको समझने के लिए हम ये समझेंगे कि जो id है वो हमारे अनकॉन्शियस माइंड में प्रिवेल करता है. इसका क्या मतलब हुआ? सिगमंड फ्रॉइड ने बोला कि जो हमारा माइंड है वो कॉन्शियस माइंड है, प्री कॉन्शियस माइंड एंड अनकॉन्शियस माइंड है. इसको समझाने के लिए ही टुक एन एग्जाम्पल ऑफ एन आइसबर्ग. ही सेड जो टिप ऑफ द आइसबर्ग है वो हमारी कॉन्शियस माइंड है, जहाँ पे मेंटल प्रोसेसेस that prevail in the conscious mind, we are actively aware of those. And also he said that the active actions like decision making, planning, judgment, social behavior, and delaying of gratification, all that is happening in our conscious mind. What is pre-conscious mind? Pre-conscious mind is right below the conscious mind. It is like a waiting room. The mental processes that you are not exactly thinking of, but they can be made aware of once you mention them. Say for example, I ask you, you are not currently thinking about your phone number, but once I ask you about your phone number, you will immediately tell me what the number exactly is. So you were not exactly thinking of it, but it has been brought to awareness by you thinking about it. And then we have unconscious mind. Sigmund Freud says unconscious mind is right below at the bottom of the iceberg. It is a reservoir of your thoughts, of your feelings, of your urges. Urges. What kind of urges? Your biological urges. What does that mean? Your survival skills, your desire to procreate, and also aggression and destruction. And aggression and destruction not only inflicted upon others, but actually inflicted upon your own self. Like how we see people committing suicide. or it was actually a case study was done with World War I soldiers who came back. They actually kept reliving those traumatic experiences of the war, even though they did not want to relive them, but their unconscious mind kept sending them those traumatic memories through their dreams. So this is what our unconscious mind is. So you have conscious mind, the tip of the iceberg. Right below the conscious mind you have pre-conscious mind, the waiting room. And then you have right below you have your unconscious mind, the reservoir of thoughts, feelings and urges, the deeply embedded urges, your biological urges. So is present in the unconscious mind. So we have the pure instinct, the desire, the need and desire to fulfill our biological urges, deeply embedded in our unconscious mind. It works only on the pleasure principle. This is actually the entire crux of it. Working on it operates on the pleasure principle, and it seeks for instant gratification. What does that mean? Like an infant, when a baby cries, it's asking for food. It needs the food immediately. You cannot convince an infant to wait till the lunchtime to have his food. The baby is crying and it needs the food right away. So that is it. It seeks to fulfill instant gratification. And what is interesting is that it never grows up. It stays in the infantile stage forever, which is why it is selfish and illogical. Just consider it as an evil angel sitting on your left shoulder, asking you to fulfill your deep desires, irrespective of what the consequences are going to be. So let's discuss ego now. Like how we discussed that id operated on the pleasure principle, ego actually operates on reality principle. That means ego is reasonable and it is realistic. But interesting thing is that ego actually arises out of id only. Why? Because ego is also looking to fulfill our pleasures, but it fulfills our pleasure in a most realistic manner. So what it does is ego acknowledges and it deals with reality. Okay, so ego here it is so developed that it acknowledges and deals with reality, and it controls and fulfills its needs, but in a most socially acceptable way. We are social animals, so it operates on a principle that okay, this is the reality, ऐसे ही करना है, ऐसे बिहेव करना है, socially acceptable क्या है क्या नहीं है वो ईगो को पता है. ईगो जो है वो रैशनल है, it rational नहीं है. It is very selfish and it is very illogical. But on the other hand, ego here, it is very rational. It accepts the reality, and it accepts the social norms, and it delays. How does it do it? It delays gratification and makes compromises. You know how I gave you the example for it, that you cannot reason with an infant to, you cannot convince an infant to wait till the lunchtime to have his food. But here ego में हम वो कर सकते हैं, एक इंसान को हम समझा सकते हैं कि आपने लंच टाइम पे खाना खाना है, उससे पहले खाना नहीं खाना है. सो एक रीज़न, इट्स वेरी रीजनेबल. सो इट डिलेज ग्रेटिफिकेशन, यू आर मेकिंग कॉम्प्रोमाइजेस. ओके, कि अगर कुछ इंस्टेंटली नहीं भी मिल रहा है तो भी कोई बात नहीं है ना, बिकॉज इड में क्या है, इंस्टेंट ग्रेटिफिकेशन चाहिए. इधर क्या है, हम उसको डिले कर रहे हैं, उसके साथ कॉम्प्रोमाइज़ कर रहे हैं कि चलो अभी कोई चीज़ नहीं मिल रही है, वो थोड़ी देर के बाद मिल जाएगी. वाई आर वी डूइंग दैट? To avoid negative consequences, in our life, to avoid conflicts, we are doing this. So interesting thing is, like I said, it also wants to fulfill pleasures, but it wants to fulfill those pleasures in the most reasonable and a realistic way. And also ego is present at a conscious level, at a pre-conscious level, and at our unconscious level. Like I said before, conscious level is the tip of the iceberg. Sigmund Freud explained it that way. And what is now pre-conscious? Pre-conscious is right below the conscious level. That means that it is not exactly we are not exactly aware of it, but it can be brought into awareness if you think about it. Like for example, अगर मैं आपको आपका फ़ोन नंबर पूछूँ, आप प्रेजेंटली अपने मोबाइल के बारे नहीं सोच रहे, बट जैसे मैं आपको बोलूँगी कि आपका मोबाइल नंबर क्या है तो आपको इमिडिएटली याद आ जाएगा, तो वो आपके प्री कॉन्शियस लेवल पे प्रेजेंट है. The same way, it is present at all three levels: at conscious level, at pre-conscious level, and at unconscious level. So there are a lot of differences between id and ego. Id it is based on pleasure principle. Ego is based on reality principle. Id looks for instant gratification, but on the other hand, ego delays that gratification, makes compromises. Id is present only at the unconscious mind, and ego is present at all the three levels: the conscious, the pre-conscious, and the unconscious level. So that's about ego. So we have done id, which operates on the pleasure principle, and we did ego, which operates on the reality principle. And now we are doing superego, which operates on the moral principle, and it develops between the age of 3 to 5 years. जो इट है वो 0 to 1 years के बीच में डेवलप होता है, एंड जो ईगो है वो 2 to 3 की एज में डेवलप होता है, एंड सुपर ईगो इज डेवलपिंग बिटवीन द एज ऑफ 3 to 5. It is a moral compass of our personality. Moral compass, how? It is a moral compass which is telling us what is right and what is wrong. And how do you learn that moral compass? You mainly learn it from your parents, but over the time, children, the people they admire, they learn that moral compass from them as well. So it could be anyone, the parents, the teachers, the uncles and aunts around. It could be anyone in the society. Now it has two components. Superego has two components. First is conscious and second is ego idol. Conscious क्या है? Conscious is that part of your super ego which forbids the unacceptable behavior. It tells you what is right and what is wrong, and अगर आपने सही करा है तो आपको वो reward मिलता है, और अगर reward in a way that you feel good about yourself. But if you do something wrong, it punishes you with the feeling of guilt. This is all about conscious. Now we're coming to ego ideal. Ego ideal is the rules and standards that you set for yourself, the rules and standards of morals that you set for yourself. So if you are successful in upholding those rules and standards of morals, it rewards you in a form of pride. But if you fail, it punishes you with the feeling of a failure and extreme guilt. If you have the standards are too high, you will never be good enough. You are always seeking for perfection, and it is humanly not possible to be perfect all the time. So you are constantly feeling guilty about yourself. So now we did the two parts of superego. Superego, it controls it, telling us what is right, what is wrong. It also controls your ego, and also we did all the three components, id, ego and superego, which it operates on the pleasure principle, and ego operates on the realistic principle, and superego operates on moral principle. And the interaction between three of them is very important. It is important that three of them are balanced, because if you have a personality in which id is too dominant, you are always seeking for instant gratification, and you're always acting on your impulses. And if your superego is too high, then you're always seeking for the high standards of morals, which it is humanly not possible to uphold them all the time. And if you have a personality in which ego is very dominating, then you're always adhering to rules and regulations. You become very inflexible, and you become very hard to adjust with other people. So it is very important that ego, superego, and id, they are in balance. They are interacting with each other. They're working with each other to make a very balanced personality.